This is not really a deviation from the regular content, but I because it's still a webtoon and stuff. But and I did used to cover this in the channel, but because it became completed and there was some weird thing going on with like not fast pass, it's called daily pass or something. It wasn't safe for me to keep it on the channel. But I want to talk about the very first webtoon that I got into in like 2009, 2010ish maybe. I think 2010 sounds about right. Which in tandem made me a huge Tower of God fan, and obviously today a Kubera fan. I got into things like Girls of the Wild, got to high school, the God of Bath, Dice, all those kind of things, and then eventually I branched out to webtoons from other places that are not lying in Naver, where I got into stuff like Saint Laurent, Looking for Group, Vibe from Vibe Comics, RRBA, and even what's the one I'm forgetting? Romantically Apocalyptic, right? But it was Noblesse. Noblesse is the first webtoon that I ever read and really got into. So I wanted to talk about, you know, how it kind of shaped my opinions on webtoon moving forward and how much it means to me.
時々俺が綺麗どうもそして僕を見て頑張りますあのね Y'all talking time just tick away You ain't clocking hours on the day All that watch is stopping what you claim Dollar crosses real got me name Hoping God just get me out this way
Not to be like sentimental or anything, but Noblesse will always have a special place in my heart as the first webtoon that I ever read. Doesn't mean it's the best, though it does have one of my favorite webtoon characters in general in Frankenstein. Frankenstein is legitimately one of my favorite characters, like from all webtoons across. Like I would have like Mio Love, Asha, and Frankenstein all fighting like for like those top three positions. Maybe Brilith, throw Brilith in there too. I'm a huge Brilith fan, but yeah, like it was very interesting because at the end of the day, I would honestly argue that while I very much like Noblesse and find it enjoyable, I don't think it's something I would really recommend to most people unless you're just kind of like you kind of don't mind like just like a little bit of monotonous action because one thing about Noblesse is that it's extremely formulaic. It it kind of follows a certain pattern, and the pattern is kind of like union member attacks, elders attack. Oh no, it's very hard for our heroes. When will Frankenstein and Raziel come? And when they come, they win. Like it's honestly like kind of that simple. Like me and my friend Alan always had this joke that when Rye and or Frankenstein would kind of pull up, we would just start talking about what would happen next. Like what's the next arc? What's the next story beat? So it's just kind of funny because we always make that joke because like Rye was that powerful. But Rye also is one of the people who's had like moments and phrases that have made me really like I could always remember a lot of the times when I was younger when something incredible happened when I was reading something and I really popped off. For example, when L in Death Note. So if you haven't a Death Note, this is your warning to get out of here for like a quick second because I mean it's Death Note. You should know. When L was able to pinpoint where light was, which region and country in Japan he was, I was like, yo, big brain galaxy explosion expansion. Like, what is going? Like, I popped the hell off, right? And at those times, I was usually always impressed with action related feats. So I could always remember things like that. When Goku first turned Super Saiyan, I popped big. I couldn't believe it. Noblesse when Raziel, well, I think was it? No, it wasn't. No, it was somebody. I can't remember exactly who it was actually. So it was a waste man. It wasn't somebody important from the unit. It was somebody away from the unit, anyways. And he said kneel, and that man knelt. I popped. I that was that at that point. That was one of the rawest things I had ever seen. He created the blood field. I think after that, and just completely disintegrated the man. I'm like, he's a beast, and that was kind of my first glimpse into like the OP-ness and the power fantasy that I believe that a lot of Koreans love to incorporate into the webtoons, because I always say that I find that especially with webtoons that center around fantasy and most conflicts are settled by combat, so might makes right. I always find the main characters are very powerful in some aspect. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the strongest or invincible, but they're quote unquote OP, if you will. They may not know they're broken. They might be broken under the right circumstances. They're broken, but they can't use their powers all the time. An amalgamation of all of it. They're holding themselves back mentally, whatever. Or their potential and latent talent is pretty much boundless and limitless. They can get as strong as they want as they need. So they really like that power fantasy, and this was my first glimpse into that because this did become a reoccurring thing. I think about Gosu, I think about Hardcore Leveling Warrior, I think about Solo Leveling, I think about some of the maybe not necessarily that, but even like a Lookism, the character has like a huge advantage over other people with the two bodies thing. You have obviously Raziel, you have Jin Mori, the Monkey King, like, you know what I'm saying, like, you know what I'm saying, like, there's a lot of, like, that's a very consistent thing. So that kind of like, this is the beginnings of me kind of understanding a lot of the stuff that these webtoons would incorporate into their narratives on a regular basis, because culture matters, right? Depending on where you come from in the world, culturally, certain traditions, certain values, and certain things will be bled into your narrative. And I would argue that something that I see a lot with specifically the ones from Korea is beauty is very important. Physical beauty, being attractive. And a lot of the time that attractiveness is not like how we see it here, more so in the West, where I will say that it's like you know, a good looking man is more so a masculine man, while I'll find sometimes in the East that kind of androgynous style, the kind of be shonen by shonen style, seems to be like this beauty standard more so. So it's very interesting when you kind of are able to kind of draw those things from these stories and narratives, and Noblesse is like the first thing that really did that for me. I really like the combat on most times. It's very simple with beams and moving fast. It's very kind of Dragon Ball-esque, and they love saying such insolent, you insolent little, like, insolent, and all of its various noun, pronoun, and all of its various forms are used all the time, which I think is very, very funny. I actually really think that the cast itself is pretty strong, all things considered. From Raziel to Sierra to Regis to the dude with the red hair, sorry, I can't remember his name, the human, and all those guys, like, I actually like them. M21. I think the cast is very solid too. At the end of the day, it's just not something I recommend from a priority standpoint. I think a lot of things are more important, but if you ever really get a chance to kind of dive into it, I think you would enjoy a lot of it, especially certain characters like Frankenstein. And one thing that I will give Noblesse absolute credit for is, I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say there was a type of fight and battle that I would argue that was kind of set up very early and always teased and slowly crescendoing to a certain moment. And when that fight ended up finally happening at the very end, I thought it lived up to its hype. And that was very special because I didn't think there was anything it could do to live up to that hype, and I was impressed that they were able to do that. So shout out to my very first webtoon. You're the reason that I'm here today, continuing to read these webtoons and enjoy it. From all walks of life, from all countries, from all places in the world, from all nationalities and everything. But obviously started with Korea and Korean webtoons and everything. But I love Noblesse, love Rai. Sierra was like my first like waifu from from webtoons, with her Scythe, because I really like Scythe. I'm a huge fan of them. So she was like my first like one. I'm like, oh, she's cute, I like her. And then the Lord was dope. I really like. I don't know. It was very good. And then they had like a little side story that I used to also read. But yeah, I think it's like a solid like 6.5 to 7 out of 10. I'll give it a 7 because of some personal stuff there, like personal bias, personal stuff there, but not that I really care about being like super duper objective. This is my opinion, you know. It is what it is. I'm not really trying to be impartial here, but yeah, I don't really think it's more than a 7. But it's a pretty long read, all things considered. But you know what I will say? There was this one arc that I think amongst webtoon arcs that are action oriented, I actually think is really good. It's a really good arc. Like, all things considered, I'd probably have it as top 10 webtoon arcs that I've read. So credit where credit is due. I'm gonna start talking because I'm rambling now. But yeah, Noblesse is dope. I liked it. I was very disappointed in both the OVA and the anime. I don't think they did a good job with it. So that's life. But name one good webtoon adaptation. Exactly, you can't.
In my drugs, pour it in my cup, sitting in my darkness with my ghouls, we pouring up. I don't really give a fuck, I don't